Today, on this special episode of B&B Movie Reviews, we step away from watching movies for a bit to take a look at one of the best TV shows we have both seen this year, Andor. We'll discuss and break it all down coming up next.
This isn't something to let pass.
No. I went in and got this myself.
How? How's that possible? It was sealed on the Imperial Naval Base in Steergard.
Look, you got the money, I got the box. What else is there to talk about?
I'll give you another 1,000 credits to tell me how you got it.
Another 1,000.
Done. How?
You just walk in like you belong.
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't imagine it.
Can't imagine what?
That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear.
Luthen attempts to recruit Cassian Andor for a mission that would weaken the Galactic Empire in this prequel series to 2016's Rogue One, where the Rebel Alliance is tasked with stealing the plans to the Death Star. So Andor, this is coming off, we've gotten into the era that Star Wars is starting to make television programs. We've had The Mandalorian, we've had Obi-Wan, we've had Boba Fett, so now we're here at Andor. No one really thought that making a series about a secondary character who was introduced and only been in one film, it's like, why would you make a series on this character? But from this season, it has really, really kind of, what a lot of Star Wars television has done, has really fleshed out that universe.
Well, it does something that I think that the other Star Wars shows tend not to do. Andor is really additive. This feels like it is contributing a lot to the greater mythology of the Star Wars franchise, and I am here for it.
I'm here for it as well. Looking at the clip that we just watched, getting into like those first 3 episodes, we look at the character of Cassian Andor, who was introduced in Rogue One, but we get a little bit more of his backstory. We get to see him a little bit as a child. Kind of everything that kind of kicks off everything that goes into this season with the inciting incident of him killing those 2 officers. How did you see these first 3 episodes as far as his arc and his place in the universe at this point?
Well, I was so glad that they released the first 3 episodes all at once, because if you watch the first episode and you watch the second episode, they kind of just end. I mean, the first 3 episodes feel like a movie, and I was into it. I was enjoying it. I wasn't necessarily as in love with it as I would eventually become. I think the first 3 episodes are really good.
Yeah, I felt the same way because you kind of know my history with another show, Game of Thrones, and it kind of had that feel with these first 3 episodes where I was just kind of like just watching it, and then all of a sudden episode 3 hits, and how that kind of crescendos to where it kind of juxtaposes, him leaving Ferrix with when Marva kind of picks him up as a child. And I love that juxtaposition and the way that they filmed that. And I thought that was beautifully done in those first 3 episodes to really kind of cap off that arc of that story.
Yeah, and I thought the most clever way to introduce Andor was to introduce him the same way he was introduced into Rogue One. In Rogue One, we see him murder a guy because he could lead to the Rebel Alliance being, infiltrated. And what we see in Episode 1 is we see him kill 2 people now, but for more selfish reasons. And so it's a tiny leap as far as, going to that length, but it's a significant leap.
It's interesting too, because you look at the character of Cassian Andor, and he kind of feels, I don't want to say like the reluctant hero, but like a lot of
He's definitely reluctant. He doesn't want to be anybody's hero. He's a selfish dude.
He's the reluctant hero, but he also doesn't feel like he's the character of in his own story, where it kind of feels like, we talked about it on the last episode, how you were saying with Black Adam, he kind of just floats around. It feels like Cassian Andor is just kind of floating around, where there's not a lot of motivation for his character, and he's kind of being dragged along by other characters who have a forward momentum, like Luthen or Mon Mothma, even though they don't have interactions. But that feels like that's more of the progression, and he's kind of just along for the ride. Similar to kind of how we see in Mad Max Fury Road, where we're kind of following that journey, but it's someone else's story.
Yeah, but there's a big question at the start of Andor, and that question is, how does Cassian, in this version, that we meet him in this brothel looking for his sister, become the Cassian that teams up with Jyn Erso and gets those Death Star plans? How does he become the resistance fighter? And it's a slow answer. It takes the whole season to get us there.
It does, and I don't even think we're fully there yet.
No, I agree.
But I think we do start to see the spark by the end of this season, especially with Marva and where we end up, where he's going to start leading to the character that we see in Rogue One. But yeah, it's a little bit of a slow burn, but I think it works very well with that slow burn.
And they're introducing so many people in those first 3 episodes.
It's very sprawling, because we have to go through so many different characters. We have to see the political intrigue with Mon Mothma and how she's kind of maneuvering through to have to hide her money and things like that. And Luthen, who's organizing certain things, and other different factions of the rebellion with Saw Gerrera and things like that. So,
but who is the most important character introduced in these first 3 episodes? B2 Emo.
Oh, yes.
The best droid.
Yeah.
But Cassian, oh, my heart.
I know. B2 Emo literally became probably one of the best droids that we've had.
He's the best droid.
The best droid. He's amazing. Like, the sympathy that they give to that droid, and the relationship that Cassian has with that droid as well, I think is very... I mean, you see it when Rogue One, where he has that relationship with K2SO.
Very different droid.
Very different droid, but you can definitely see where that kind of came from with the relationship that he builds with B2 Emo.
Well, and he has a love for droids the way that other humans don't in the Star Wars universe. Just the way that he scratches B2 Emo.
Yeah.
There's a bond there.
It's
special.
It's a special bond. Yeah. So when we return, we are going to look at one of the other arcs in the series when Cassian goes to Narkina 5. Stay tuned.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
I made a mistake. A man who was just released on 4 ended up back on 2 the next day. Word got out on the floor, and then they killed them all.
You need those other men there.
They're just leaving.
Now.
If he was released, you heard me.
No one's getting out, are they?
Not now. Not after this. At least your friend is free.
You two, on program now. Up, hands on your heads. Move. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Now. Let's go.
How many guards on each level? Never more than 12.
Kino Loy learns of the disturbing news that a prisoner set for release was instead transferred to another level of the prison, and when news got out, the whole level was exterminated, setting the path forward for the other prisoners to plan a prison break and escape. Yeah, this segment of this show it's tremendous. I mean, it's nail biting.
Best Star Wars ever.
Best Star Wars ever. I can get on that page as well.
These 3 episodes, they're unlike anything that we've seen in the universe so far.
Yeah.
And Kino Loy, Andy Serkis, a character who comes in as an antagonist, and I thought for sure he was going to be the hurdle that Andor was going to have to leap over.
Yeah.
And the way that the show then brings him in, and in the process inspiring his own resistance, Andor's own resistance.
I love the idea of Andy Serkis being in this show, especially, there was all the talk, of course, because he played a character in the sequel trilogy.
Did he?
But,
I don't remember that.
No, actually, I don't remember that either. But bringing him in this capacity, and like you were saying, like, to have him have his own kind of personal arc where he's just kind of bent on do the job, I have this many days, and then I'm set free. This is, and he's trusting the system, to work, and it doesn't. And then once he learns that, and the back and forth that he has with Cassian, as far as like, him kind of learning from him, as far as like the rebellion aspect of it, I thought was just great. But as far as how we got here, so we saw Luthen recruited Andor to do a mission on another planet, Aldhani, where they had to steal some credits. And once they pull that off, he goes to, Space Miami. And
yeah.
and another thing too, talking on this series, where it really feels like Tony Gilroy is pulling from real world stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is also 2022, the movie.
Yeah.
This is very much speaking to today. But, that Aldhani heist, what's so important in that story is how that inspires his mother, his stepmother, Fiona Shaw, Marva, to make her stand on Ferrix. And she is going to embrace the rebellion because of the Aldhani heist, which Andor just did to get some money, to get some credits, so he could go to Space Miami. And then he is imprisoned wrongfully. I mean, he should be imprisoned for the Aldhani heist, but he gets imprisoned for something else that he totally didn't do.
Yeah.
And when he's in that fortress and he's facing the extremity of these injustices that he's known his whole life, and he does something, about it, and in doing something about it inspires all these other people, he catches that spark that he ignited in Aldhani with his mother.
Exactly, which I love. And speaking in the prison and what they were actually building, and we see the reveal of that at the end of this season, which I thought was a brilliant story device as well, that you have Cassian Andor helping to build the thing that ultimately is going to be his end as well.
You're right. His life is tied to the Death Star.
Yeah.
And it's when it's revealed at the very, very end of this series that those gizmos are part of the array of the Death Star. It's also just an acknowledgement that, we all have a gun to our heads, right? We're all living a prequel. We're all going to die. It's what we do on the path to that death that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that this segment of the show really was kind of like the turning point for Andor as a character,
and the series.
Yeah, like we talked about before, being the reluctant hero. Like you see the turning point where he's like, okay, now I have a purpose. I can be a source of good to lead these people to
and when
a
he
brighter
convinces Kino Loy in that clip to join the cause, to let's get out of here, and we get that never more than 12.
Yeah.
I was on my feet. I was on my feet. I was watching it at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was howling.
Yep. Never more than 12. Probably one of the best lines that I've heard in Star Wars in a while. So when we return, we'll take a look at some of the other aspects of this show, some of the political intrigue, and a little bit more into Luthen. Stay right there.
Jason, let's go see your room.
I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Luthen explains to his informant what he has sacrificed for this rebellion in one of the most riveting monologues that will surely be recited in acting classes for years to come. This scene was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, going to Luthen, and what I really want to kind of discuss is kind of Luthen and Mon Mothma and everything that's kind of happening in this series away from Andor. But throughout this series, Luthen, he talks about sacrifice and what he has done, and
he's damned himself.
He's damned himself, and he's become probably the very thing that he's trying to eradicate.
When you hunt monsters, you become monsters,
Yes.
right? What I respond to so strongly with this aspect of Andor is how the Rebel Alliance, or the factions that will become the Rebel Alliance, are basically the Phantom Menace Part 2. The Emperor in Episode 1 was the puppet master pulling the strings that got the Trade Federation and the Republic to fight against each other. The Separatist movement happens. They fabricate this war, and he's able to erect the Empire in doing so. He is a Phantom Menace. And now he has his Empire, and suddenly there's this other Phantom Menace. There's a new Phantom Menace, and it's Luthen.
The Empire.
It's Mon Mothma. It's all these little, resistance fighters across the galaxy.
It's interesting too because Mon Mothma, I think she alludes to that earlier in the season because she mentions Emperor Palpatine, and she's kind of like taking lessons and learning from what he did in the Phantom Menace by kind of building from within to kind of create this empire. So she's like, okay, I've learned from the Emperor. These are the things that I'm going to do to fight against you.
But she's not willing to do some of the things that Luthen will do.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because like in any rebellion going up against a fascist regime, there's going to be conflicts within like different sectors of that, and we see that between Luthen and even Saw Gerrera, because Saw Gerrera is looked at as an extremist, and and he and Saw Gerrera doesn't want to work with Luthen or with other people that Luthen is trying to put together, and then you have Mon Mothma who is to do things on the political side of things, and some of the things that she has to do, that she has to sacrifice as far as like with her family, to hide this money that needs to be accounted for.
The sin that she ultimately commits at the end of this series really does elevate her to the level of Machiavellian rebel fighter that Luthen is, and makes me concerned for Mon Mothma. Makes me concerned.
Yeah, which, I mean, we know that she becomes the leader and the face of the rebellion because we kind of know where all this stuff kind of leads. But the thing that I find most interesting is the journey between that. What we've gotten this season, where Mon Mothma goes leading into the second season. Will she get found out about certain things? Luthen, because I don't see a happy ending for him.
Well, he's not in Rogue One.
He's not in Rogue One. And so there's a lot of things that need to be accounted for that I think is wide open for Tony Gilroy to play with in season 2.
What did you think of the ending where Andor gives over to Luthen, where he finds Luthen and he puts his own blaster in Luthen's hand and says, "My life is your life. I'll make it simple. Bring me on or kill me."
I mean, I think at that point, he, with the death of his mother, with death of Marva, I think at this point, he doesn't really have anywhere else to go. I mean, he saved his friends. He saved Bix and I forget the other guys, the other gentleman's name that's in it as well.
Brasa.
Brasa. And I think that he's just at that point where he does feel like he's found his purpose, but I think he's also just ready for it to end. So it's like, either I'm going to fight for something, or if I'm not going to fight for this, then I might as well just be dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is now activated in a way that he wasn't activated before. And so he does want to do what Luthen is doing.
Yeah, which I find extremely interesting. And then on the flip side of that, and we probably don't have enough time to talk about it, but the ISB, like everything that has to deal with the Empire, like I love looking at the Empire in this way where, we look at like middle management, we look at, like the contracting side of the Empire and how they have really occupied the whole galaxy. They have really put their thumb on the galaxy and are controlling all of these planets, all of this whole area. And I like that aspect of
how they have dehumanized the civilization that they are controlling.
Yeah, which I find that to be completely fascinating. And we don't have enough time, but Deidre Mero, to see where that character goes in season 2.
Excited.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun to see. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at Andor as a whole and where does it fall within all of these shows that are currently on Disney Plus. Stay right there.
And someone says, "You need a bone marrow transplant," those are just not words you want to hear.
I got a call that it was the best match. It was one of the best days of my life. I'm so happy that you're okay.
I just want to say thank you for the second chance at life. Thousands of patients need a donor like you. Learn how you can help at bethematch.org.
And welcome back. So now we're going to kind of get into some of the successes and the failings of Andor and just talk about this series as a whole. So, Brad.
Failings? What failings?
The thing is like, you look at the ratings and they've talked about how Andor is the lowest rated show on Disney Plus, but to me, it's probably the best show, not just show, but content that
I'm going to take that probably out of your sentence. It is the best show on Disney Plus.
Yes.
It was the best show of 2022, as far as I'm concerned.
Easily.
It's an incredible series.
Yeah.
And I understand the desire to talk about the ratings and how few Star Wars fans watch that. If that's the case, I don't even really know. I certainly don't care. I understand why some people might not have initially tuned into Andor, because I was not terribly excited. I was like, Diego Luna's character from Rogue One, do we need to know more about him? And the answer is yes, we did, but we didn't know it when this show started. So people didn't tune in, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it, is because, I think Cassian Andor is our entry point into learning more about the Empire at the height of its powers, really, like after Revenge of the Sith, and when they've kind of taken over and they've occupied the whole galaxy.
I think that 2022 audiences have a better understanding of fascism than they did a few years ago.
Yeah.
And, the original Star Wars trilogy certainly was political. It was an extension of World War II fascism. But in 1977, I think we had felt like we had solved it. And now in 2022, we realize we haven't solved it, that democracy is still extremely fragile.
Yeah.
And this is now Andor using Star Wars metaphor to talk about today.
Which I highly appreciate. But looking at some of the other shows that we have gotten since I guess Mandalorian season 1. I mean, we've had Mandalorian season 1 and 2, the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, it's okay. It's
the
okay.
Clone Wars season 7, The Bad Batch.
The animated stuff is firing on all cylinders, which I really enjoy. But I mean, you look at everything that they're doing on television. I think at this point you have to look at Cassian as kind of like the gold standard.
Oh, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that the other Disney Plus shows are a lot of fun. Yeah. I have a blast with them, even Book of Boba Fett. And I loved a lot about Obi-Wan Kenobi. But those shows have an eye on the past. They are nostalgic.
Yeah.
Andor feels present in today, in the moment. And again, like I said, it is additive. It is expanding the mythology in a way that the other shows oftentimes feel like they're shrinking them. Like Luke Skywalker, really?
Yeah.
Really? We gotta have Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian?
And I like Mandalorian.
I like Mandalorian too.
But it's interesting because I rewatched Rogue One and I really respond to like the war aspect, the boots on the ground, the man on the mission aspect of Star Wars. I mean, granted, yeah, I like space wizards and laser swords. I like all that stuff, and I can't wait to get back to that in Mandalorian season 3 and where we go with the Acolyte and all these other shows coming out. But I don't know. I think it's something to be said about the forgotten people, the forgotten man that that are really being affected by the Empire and by everything else that's going on with the Skywalkers or whoever else.
Rebellion isn't made by special people. It's just made by people who decide to climb. There's that word, climb, to rise, to help others, to embrace unity and fight the thing that is oppressing you. It's not about Luke Skywalker. It's about Cassian Andor, right? And I just think that some factions of the fandom don't want to have those kinds of conversations. But I would just ask them to go back and look at A New Hope and see how it was inspired by revolutions all around the world, including the Viet Cong, including the American Revolution.
Yeah,
it's there in Andor.
Yeah, it's all there. Now, where do you see Andor? Not just with season 2, but with what they've established with the production and the way the show has been critically received. Tony Gilroy has just done amazing work. But do you think they will continue this style, whether it's with Andor or with other characters or new characters? Do you see them continuing to make more, I guess, for lack of a better term, adult fare for Star Wars?
I don't know if I would say if I see them making more adult fare. I would like them to embrace the physical. I like, locations.
Yeah.
What a breath of fresh air that is in Andor to be out of the volume. I think the volume is an amazing technological tool that ILM has created, and we see it used exceptionally well throughout all those other Disney Plus shows. But I also think we saw the limitations of it in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
There you go. Obi-Wan, I think, really showed the limitations of what the volume has. But yeah, there's something to being on set, being on location. There's a tactile feel to it that really just adds to the milieu of the universe. That it just feels more grounded, and I think it just connects us more as an audience, and you really feel the tension and the stakes and how dire these situations are when you put those characters in that type of setting. So I think that really worked well for it. Yeah,
Star Wars has always been about the physical. You look at like Tatooine, and it is this grungy, grimy, horrible desert city that doesn't look like a fun place to be. And we need to keep that in Star Wars, and Andor has made that its mission as well. Yeah, I agree, and I think we definitely need to do what we can to try to keep that in Star Wars. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Andor Season 1. If we're going to rate it, I would say safe to say B+. B+. B+ all the way, so definitely check it out when you get a chance. That's going to do it for this special episode of the B&B Movie Reviews. We will see you next time at the movies. I don't mean to be too hard.